What's going on, everybody? It is Monday, October 19th, and that can only mean one thing. It's time for my news radar. If you don't know, my news radar comes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and this is where I break down the latest in gaming and tech news. So without any further ado, let's jump right into things. So this first news story is actually a little bit of an update from something that I talked about on a previous edition of News Radar. Due to a new PlayStation 4 update that is preparing for the PlayStation 5, you'll be able to be in party chats with PS4 gamers on your PS5. People started seeing this little pop-up warning that gave people a little bit of cause for concern. It says, we want the PlayStation Network to be fun for everyone, which is why we have a community code of conduct. Please be aware that voice chats in parties may be recorded and sent to us by other users. By participating in voice chats, you agree to your voice being recorded. So obviously this was concerning for some people. They don't want their voices just being recorded all the time without their consent, right? And so this caused a big uproar. A lot of people got very upset. Personally, I never saw it as a huge issue as someone that has Google Home speakers throughout my house, a smartphone. You know, people get upset when they find out, you know, your TV's listening to you, well, your phone's listening to you, your speakers are listening to you, everything's listening to you. If you carry a smartphone, your phone is listening to you. So we all kind of just accept this intrusion into our lives in other realms, but for some reason when our PlayStation is listening to us, we get a little bit freaked out. Something new is spying on us, even though we know everything else is spying on us. Thank you, Mr. Snowden. But never fear, it is not what it seems to be. We have an update here, which I'm going to be reading from Polygon.com, where they get an update from Sony themselves and explain exactly what's going on here. Catherine Jensen said, quote, "We didn't clearly communicate this feature or explain why we were introducing it, and we apologize for that." She goes on to say, quote, "If a PlayStation 5 player needs to file a harassment report, they'll be able to include up to a 40-second long voice chat clip in their report. Only the most recent 5 minutes of a voice chat will be available for a player to use in this reporting function. There won't be an option to opt out of this voice chat recording function because we want all users to feel safe when playing with others online, not just those who choose to enable it. And finally, this feature will not actively monitor or listen in on conversations ever." So it sounds like what it's actually doing here is something similar to the instant replay feature on the PlayStation 4, where you've got your recent few minutes saved. It's there in RAM or whatever, and you can hit save and then actually save it. So it's recording this, but it's not actually sending it off anywhere until you choose to do so. And as someone who has played a game like PUBG for a long time that has proximity chat, which can be hilarious, it can also be extremely annoying because there are some truly toxic, mean-spirited assholes out there. I don't want to shock anybody with this revelation. But I don't know, maybe having this feature around, you jump into somebody's party chat that you don't know, they don't know you. Maybe you're less likely to be an absolute ass clown to people, to complete strangers, if you're worried that your voice is going to get sent off to Sony to say, hey, this dude's a piece of shit and needs to be, maybe suspended from being able to use his online services until he can learn to play like an adult. You could also look at that as maybe being a negative, that, people are going to misinterpret what I'm saying. Is this cancel culture moving into the video game space? I can see both ends of this argument. To me, it is not an issue to me personally, because if I had a PlayStation 5, just like with my PlayStation 4, I don't often find myself in party chats full of people who I do not know. I'm in chats with people who I am friends with and who I know. And if those people are going to send off your voice and report you to try to get you banned, maybe those people aren't actually your friends. Definitely a weird gray area where I can see where Sony's coming from, because there are a lot of kids that play on their PlayStation, and maybe they don't want to, be talked to the way that some people will talk to you on the internet. But I can also see where you might not want to have this thing be a thing. Things could be misinterpreted and sent off. I mean, it is only a 40-second long clip. How much context does that give you to be able to say, oh, well, this was taken out of context, I didn't mean it like that? so forth and so on. Definitely an interesting thing. I kind of doubt that it's going to be as big a deal as people are making it out to be, but you can still see where maybe you don't want the world to creep in that direction. So this next news story is a little bit of a disappointing one, and it concerns the Xbox Series X. Obviously, we just got our first look at the PlayStation 5's UI just a few days ago. I've done a full breakdown video as well as a separate video that points out how that PlayStation 5 UI might be hinting towards quick resume features being enabled with the PlayStation 5 as well. But one of the biggest things about the PlayStation 5 UI that it has as an advantage is that it runs at native 4K. Well, it turns out the Xbox Series X UI is only running at 1080p. We've got a tweet here from John Linneman. He says, well, the big problem for me more than anything with the Xbox Dash is the low resolution. I was disappointed with the Xbox One X only offering a 1080p UI when the PS4 Pro did 4K. But for 1080p UI to continue on Series X, that's really not acceptable to me. And I can definitely see where that would be a little bit annoying for somebody that's experiencing games in full 4K. You know, that UI is going to look considerably worse than on your actual games. Now, what Microsoft is saying is that by limiting the UI's resolution, they're reserving more RAM for processing power. So basically, by opting out of going to 4K on their user interface, which they feel like it doesn't necessarily have to have the greatest fidelity, they can let their games run just, you know, a little bit better. How much RAM is this saving? How much of an impact does this make on performance? It's kind of hard to say. At any rate, I would say a little bit disappointing all around for that sort of thing. It looks like we have leaked renders of what the Samsung Galaxy S30 will look like, and we apparently have a leaked release date sometime in January of next year, so it's coming much sooner than I think a lot of us might have expected. So obviously this is what the recent Samsung phones have looked like. These camera bumps are getting absolutely gargantuan. You've got the super duper zoom periscope lens there, and while I don't love the aesthetic, I guess it's okay. Well, now we have from reliable leaker at OnLeaks a full render of what the S30 is apparently going to look like. And it looks as though they're trying to round off and kind of maybe try to minimize a little bit the size of that bump. In fact, they moved the flash off of the bump and they're sort of rolling that bump into the edge of the phone. I guess, you know, that's another attempt to just try and shrink this enormous camera bump just a little bit. It also looks to me as though the cutout for the front-facing camera has gotten considerably smaller as well. I'm seeing a power and a volume rocker on that side and then nothing on the other side, so it doesn't look like we're getting any sort of Bixby button return or anything weird like that either. All in all, I kind of like the idea of shrinking that camera bump. So the dimensions are quoted as being 151.7 millimeters by 71.2 millimeters by 7.9 millimeters, or 9 millimeters at the camera bump. So the camera bump is still 1.1 millimeters thicker than the rest of the phone, but that's not terrible compared to, I think, what we've been looking at. Apparently the phone is due to arrive earlier than ever for a Galaxy S flagship, specifically January of early next year, and Android Central is independently confirming with their sources that that is the current slated release. This is probably happening so that they can quickly respond to the iPhone's release. All in all, this doesn't look like a generational leap like you might be hoping for. This looks more iterative, like a smaller step forward for the Samsung S series line. So in addition to what would be the S30 or the S21, depending on what naming convention they wind up going with, we also have a leak of what is going to be the Ultra version of that same device, so the S30 Ultra or the S21 Ultra. So it's going to be looking at either a 6.7 or a 6.9 inch screen, so a very large display. We're getting that same shrunken hole punch cut out there, and then we're adding the additional lens there, so that bump is getting much wider. The flash is moving onto the bump as well, and we're going somewhere around 165.1 millimeters by 75.6 by 8.9, and then 10.8 if you measure the thickness at the camera bump. So it is a thicker phone, a bigger phone really in all dimensions. So what do you guys think? Is this an improvement in terms of the visuals, or is this a step back, a sidestep? What do you think about how this new S30 is apparently going to look? So guys, that's all the news I have for you on this edition of my News Radar. Be sure to check back, like I said, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next edition of my News Radar. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends. If you enjoy my content, please consider becoming a Scary If Literal member. You'll get access to a whole bunch of emoticons to use with live streams and a shout out on an upcoming video. Thanks as always for your continued support.